But I want to find out how you transitioned into journalism. How did it happen?
Well, so I'm at Legon, and of all the courses, first of all, I found myself editing the student magazine.
At the university too?
Okay. I finished, and then they had opened the School of Journalism at Legon, and I decided to do the postgraduate. When I could have done other things, at that time the most attractive thing to do was law. So I could have opted, but I took that. After my service, I did teaching for my service, history, in the Bronga-Half region. After the service, I finished service on 30th June. July 1st, I was working at Ghanaian Times as a features writer.
Wow. That's quick.
I do 2 years there, and for reasons that I thought was a threat to my existence. I was too young, so I was naive. And when I look back, I have stayed, but God has a purpose for us.
Yeah.
So after 2 years, I left. I was in the wilderness, worked with a paper called The Statesman.
Yeah.
And then I ended up GIJ in '79. 2 years later, there's a coup d'etat, and the principal or the head, no, this principal is sacked for some financial reasons. And I think when they look at the people there, I had then started writing for the Spectator as a columnist, and I was about the only columnist, not too many of us, about 2, 3. I was well read, so people knew me.
Yeah.
I had won the Journalist of the Year in 1981, UAC, and that's another story. So when they look at the people at GIG, I think that I fitted the bill. My friend at Watson was the Minister of Information, Secretary of Information, and my credentials and my fame was established. So I got a nod to be the director.
Okay.
And I became acting director for 2 years, I believe. And then I moved on to go to Paris to broaden my horizon.
Okay.
When I came back, the job was gone, so I had to do other things.
Yeah. How was journalism those days?
Well, we are talking about 79, first of all, when I joined Ghanaian Times in '76, there was a military rule. We didn't have too many private, there were only about 2 private newspapers. The dominant media was the state-owned media. They were under control of the powers that be. Editors could be appointed and sacked at the whim or the fiat of the Minister of Information or the Secretary of Information. Journalists work under fear. Then there's the transition to civilian rule on the Liman for 2 years. At that period, we had a taste of freedom, so you could do whatever you wanted to do, even then. Then there's a reversal, 81, then from 82 to 92, it was the period of culture of silence. And that was not the best of time to be a media person. I mean, today, if you go to any of the schools of journalism, if you go to GIG, there are about over 1,000 people who are doing various aspects of communication studies. Yeah. Almost all the private universities are establishing schools of journalism. There are a lot of mushroom schools. There are so many newspapers, radio stations, so now there's no fear about being penalized, being arrested, losing your life. So those were difficult times, dangerous times. So it was a dark chapter to be a journalist. Today there's a light. There are windows, there are opportunities. Nobody harasses a journalist. And if you are harassed, you can resort to the courts. You can resort to, we have habeas corpus. You can't be kept in for more than 48 hours. So there's a lot of protection for the media of today.
When you finally became the director of GIJ,
yeah,
you were very young. Tell me about the experience. And at some point, you had to leave once again.
Yeah.
Tell me the story behind it.
Well, no, by the time I go to GIJ, young as I might have been, I had learned my lessons from my Nooks experience, from my Times experience. So I moved in there with a clear vision as to what had to be done, and with a clear strategy as to how to achieve my goals. So I brought everybody on board, the workers, the staff, and I had ideas as to what the training of journalists should be like. You know, this is a profession that is a combination of the vocational skills and the intellectual dimension. And I believe that the best journalist is the one who is strong in social studies or the sciences or in academic scholarship. And then the vocational skills becomes secondary, because there are stories of journalists who reach the heights who didn't necessarily have formal training in journalism. They learned on a job. So I decided, when I look at the course content of GIJ, I thought there was a need for a change. So I introduced a couple of subjects that would deepen the intellectual groundings of the students. So I brought a course like African political thought, political economy, and of course we also did history. And I think I even de-emphasized advertising, because at that time, look at the times. It was in the context of the revolution, and if you know socialist theory of media, advertising then they didn't play that major role of marketing capitalist goods, so we de-emphasize it. So the point is that, of course, there was some critique of that major policy, but the whole vision was to make sure that those who came out of GIJ, it was a 2-year program at that time, were deeply grounded in theory and practice. And I think by injecting that aspect of into the training, I was building on the dreams of the founding fathers. That's when Nkrumah set up GIJ. It was to train journalists to be involved in the struggle for African liberation and unification of Africa. So I thought I was building on that foundation, which had been lost along the line. So we did a lot of things. I even redesigned the certificate.
Okay.